prosecutor's expertise is the law and prosecuting that part of the baton. And then together we're going to talk about what we think the legislature needs to do. We said when this passed, law enforcement in general, that there were going to be a great deal of problems, that people were going to venture off into areas that clearly were not articulated or legal, and it was going to be an increasing problem, and it already is evidence in itself to be so. Basically, the situation is marijuana to use, possess, or sell is illegal in the state. But there's an exemption for very small activity for medical marijuana as passed by the voters. And if it's not articulated in that exemption, then it falls to the other part, which the prosecutor will speak to. So that's kind of the backdrop. We know some folks won't be happy, some folks may be happy, but our job in law enforcement is to uphold and enforce the law as it currently exists. And that's exactly what we have done and what we will continue to do. I'm obviously joined by our great prosecutor, Judge Prosecutor Jessica Cooper, the NET Board Chair from Blue Pit Township, Chief Bowden, and as you know, NET is the narcotics enforcement team that's run out of this office, but its components are from agencies all across this county and other agencies, including federal agencies. So we're going to kind of walk through this in a real detailed fashion to give you the specifics so you can understand how this plays out in the interface. It's not because some folks believe that they have the right to do this. We want to make it clear so that you and the public understands what is legal and what is not legal. And also, by way of backdrop, we received numerous complaints from citizens about these operations and about these enterprises. And in fact, when we received a number of complaints about one particular enterprise, I directed one of our captains to go there personally and advise them that we felt that what they were doing was illegal and put them on notice, and yet they continue. So that's by way of backdrop. Okay. We've received, so I'll let you kind of read through this, but we've received approximately 150 complaints of marijuana grow operations, and many of those were under the allegation they were medical marijuana. But again, the exemption for possess, use, sale, etc. is very specific under the medical marijuana, and these activities did not fall under. And now we'll go into some of the specific sites. The cafe operates during the day as a food operation. At 4 o'clock, they reopen as a compassion club. They initiated an investigation based on, again, numerous complaints that marijuana was being sold in violation of state law and not in compliance with the Exemption Act. This is a little bit of background as it relates to that particular club. They required a membership fee and access, and the prosecutor is going to speak much more articulate and on point to this, but under Michigan law, there is no such thing as a dispensary where people can sell marijuana, retail it. Undercover officers obviously made purchases in these establishments from individual people. They also, throughout the course of this investigation, observed numerous hand-to-hand transactions, meaning outside of these businesses, people were then selling to other people. And that's one of the things that we made concerns about and raised as a point, that oftentimes when you have a situation like this in other states, you'll find a great deal of criminal activity begins to go and surround it. Not just drug transactions, ancillary drug transactions, but they also become the target of crime. A number of cases are going in California where they've been the target of armed robbery and murder because they go in and they get to steal not only drugs and money at the same time. In fact, last night in the news we saw one of the operations that sells some of the equipment has now been broken into for the second time to have their equipment stolen. This is another location that we received numerous complaints about, clinical relief in violation of state law. And in this particular location, it actually was the subject of an article in the paper. And that's where I directed someone to go in and specifically put them on notice that it was outside the law. This just kind of gives you a bit of background on the situation, on that case, of that particular location. As you can see, one of the common threads throughout this is that there is no caregiver, no doctor-patient relationship situation in most of these situations. That relationship is typically not established. The officers were able to purchase even without a valid patient card. And what we also saw is that many of these cards, in fact, don't have any photos on them. So there's no degree of verifying or ability to even know who is legally authorized to have that card or to what activity they're supposed to be doing. As again, there was activity in the parking lot around that business, ancillary drug activity springing up around that business, including other narcotics were seized in addition to marijuana in that particular case. And the owner of that particular building solicited buying marijuana from other people, which he intended to then resell through his establishment. These are some of the things we talked about, that typically as these have evolved in other states, you see a host of other kinds of activity and crime that begins to spin around it. In Independence Township, there was a victim who was a medical marijuana person, was robbed at gunpoint while he was attempting to illegally sell a pound of marijuana. So this just kind of goes through some of the recent cases that have been seen in this county that is additional crime, kind of an ancillary crime to this whole situation. Now, the issues that we talk about. In California, we're regularly communicating with agencies that are experiencing different challenges across the country with relationships to some of these issues. California, as an example, in some of those establishments, they already have 4 murders, 2 officer-involved shootings, 4 armed robberies, grow operations, 5 arsons, and numerous home invasions. So, as I said, we found in jurisdictions, and now including Oakland County, where crime is springing up around these operations. And from my point of view, I think most of the voters went to the poll and thought of somebody who was in pain and sick, and they wanted to help them relieve that pain. They didn't anticipate that crime would be circling around a business or in their neighborhood as a result of this. And that's not part of the bargain, and that many of these people that are getting cards are not what I think most of the voters had in mind, which was a debilitating or severe kind of pain or chronic illness. You know, we have uncovered numerous people, some that have gotten cards because they have stomach aches, sore shoulders. I don't think that that was the intent of the voters, and if it is the intent, then what was intended was legalization, not debilitating disease, and that's a very big difference.